Olá, sejam todos bem-vindas e bem-vindos a
Hello,
este evento.
welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our event today about cybersecurity, technology, on-the-job training. This is our second talk in business about this topic, and that's for two reasons. First, because this is a very dynamic industry, and also because it's a very dynamic, complex topic. We can't stand still in time. We had to keep up with the later advancements in this area, and also because it has great potential in terms of employment. This industry is growing dramatically worldwide. It generated over 4 million jobs, and still there's a shortage of over 2.5 million additional jobs. Of course, not everyone has the skills or the talent to work in this area. Not everyone knows how this industry works, and that's the reason why we're talking about cybersecurity from a different angle today. Our focus today is going to be on the experience of our guests today as employers, as entrepreneurs in this booming industry. And before I welcome Amir Bar-El, who is our special guest from Israel, apropos, thank you very much for joining us today, Amir. It's almost 2 a.m. there, so thank you very much for your kindness to speak to us this evening, or this night for you. I would also like to thank Uninter, the school itself, and its departments that make this type of event possible. That's what enables this type of meeting to come about. So let me tell you what it's going to be like today. I'm going to briefly introduce Amir, our speaker. We're going to talk to him for about 15 minutes, short questions and answers. This is going to happen in English. That's why we have this event. It's being streamed in two channels, one in Portuguese and in English on Global Hub. So you can switch channels if you want. That's easy. Just look at the comments and you'll learn how to do it on YouTube channels. And with that, I switch to English to introduce our first guest, Amir.
A great pleasure to have you join us. Most of this time, thankfully, we're going to spend talking with you and talking with Lillian. I'm just going to give a very brief summary of Amir's experience, which is quite impressive, and I'm not going to do it justice, but it's more interesting to spend our time hearing directly from him. So Amir is the founder and CEO of a leading cybersecurity firm, which has headquarters both in Israel and in Brazil. And the mission of his company and its work is to provide advanced protection from cyber incidents. He has frontline military grade experience combating cyber threats and attacks. Before founding CySource, he served as vice president at Rockwell Automation, which is its cyber division. He's done extensive work with law enforcement and government agencies to prevent and also to investigate terrorism, other types of crime, and also working on cyber intelligence solutions. So a lot of expertise in both offensive and tactical cyber, and in incident response, workforce development, really everything you need to found and run and grow a cybersecurity firm. So, Amir, it is a great pleasure to have you here with us. And let me just start at the beginning and get going with the question. Love it if you could share your journey of creating a cybersecurity company and growing it. So if you could tell us a little bit about what inspired you to venture into this field and to do what you've done.
Definitely. First of all, I want to say thank you to you, Jason, to Untitled, for this opportunity to share and exchange ideas, thoughts, and knowledge. So thank you for that. And as for the questions, so what propelled us to create such a company and to move forward? So as you mentioned, and you mentioned quite a lot about some of the things that we did in the past. So when we looked at approaching and building a new business, we truly wanted to create, first and foremost, a company to protect organizations and to create that security environment. And the first step that we understood is that the skills is the key and the first line of defense of no matter who you are, no matter what type of level that you need to act and serve in which position, the skills is first. So when we looked at this entire branch, we said, okay, we want to start first of all with the skills, and this propelled the company to first become and develop the education, technology, and community. And from that onwards, we developed to further solutions. So truly that the viewing the missing skills that are needed to defend was the first item that propelled us to launch our activity.
Great. Well, thanks for that. I'm also curious because you're obviously based in Israel, and that's a country that's known for its strong focus on cybersecurity. Could you tell us how the local cybersecurity ecosystem has contributed to your company's development?
Wow, it contributed so much. First of all, in Israel, specifically in the cyber community, we are very well connected between ourselves. We engage a lot with topics, we discuss a lot. So basically in a phone call, I can reach anybody and everybody in the local cybersecurity industry, and we can consult. So having that, plus having a really great talent that is coming from even earlier from the high school, even there we have educational programs going through the military, and then having this really amazing additional courses and training from the military side to act for their services, and then directly stepping out to the entrepreneurial world or to the high-tech industry. It really creates a driving engine. And because that there is such a huge ecosystem that then you really try to find the cutting edge, the next thing. You're really in the front of things. So sometimes, we speak and I reach to many regions in the world, and then I say, okay, what I'm saying right now is maybe not the right thing to say in this environment, because we need to speak maybe 1, 2, or 3 steps backwards to work on the more ground level. Not everybody has that high level of awareness to the importance of cybersecurity, such as the Israeli ecosystem, because we live that on a daily basis.
Interesting. Let me just, before giving you a next question, it's great to see that some of the people who are watching are already putting in questions. And we have an entire block after some initial questions, first to Amir and then to our second guest, Lillian. I'm going to turn to questions that are coming from the audience. So please put your questions in to the chat. Don't worry, if you send them, we're getting them and we're monitoring them. We will get to as many of those questions as we can in a second block. So feel free to write the questions as they come to your mind, and we'll go through as many of those as we can at the end of the event. So another question then, Amir, is, the military background influences the industry. Has that, and how has that heritage changed how your company has developed?
So the military challenges are influencing also the public sector, meaning that from time to time, the military even publish challenges publicly and says, hey, we have this and that challenge. Can anybody contribute to that? If so, contact us or approach us, and we maybe can create a project. So there is this huge back and forth between the private sector and the military sector. Plus, in Israel, it's mandatory to go to the military. So the military and the private sector is very well connected. And this connection really flourish. It's a flourishing relationship between the two. And I think this is the reasons that the military is able to advance so fast, because it doesn't necessarily loses the good people, the good talents to the private sector, because sometimes it knows how to incorporate this collaboration with the private sector.
Interesting. So I'm curious, because you brought up a type of collaboration between military and government, which is very interesting. I don't imagine that is true in all countries, but there is also a type of collaboration that I would imagine is important to have between business and IT within companies. So you have, right, IT that's worried about technical things, or that's worried about information security, and then you got the business, which is worried about sales and hitting numbers. How has your company worked to bridge the gap that can exist between those two areas, right? Between the business area and between the IT or IT security areas?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it has even more than one meaning to this question. So I'll try to answer at least one meaning of that. So if we are now having a discussion with a company about creating a cybersecurity strategy, then of course that we have to pay attention to what is the business of this organization, and to map that, and to understand that everything that we're going to do in terms of the strategy must not interfere with the ongoing business, and support that. So it cannot slow down the way that people are working. I cannot block developers from doing their job. I cannot block the salesperson from receiving certain emails. So this is one aspect and one meaning of this question. And maybe the second meaning could be like, I'm doing this business, so why should I now be troubled with cybersecurity? And the business, the organization needs the cybersecurity only when it is impacted. So it's a kind of a prevention methodology, and this sometimes creates a gap between the understanding of the management that I need to implement these procedures. and not being too late in implementing these procedures. So I hope I was able to answer that in both meanings.
No, that's great. Perfect. So I'm curious then, are there differences? And if so, what are the differences that you have noted between the skills of cybersecurity professionals in Israel and Brazil? And if you'd like, expand that to other geographies. And are there differences early career, mid-career, late career that you have noticed across different countries?
That's a really great question, because I think it sheds light towards the evolution of cybersecurity. And the first thing that I want to say is that there is great talent everywhere. In Brazil, there is amazing talents, and in Israel as well, and in every region. People are people and talents are talents. So, but where lies the difference? I think that the difference lies in the maturity, meaning the amount of time that a specific ecosystem is dealing with that. And due to that, the standardization of what is the required knowledge in order to fulfill a function properly. So, for example, in Israel, a few years back, we developed a methodology regarding professions. What are the types of professions that exists in cybersecurity and what is needed from foundation level up to mid-level to entry level? Because in the early days, when something happened, then we just thought about, okay, who's the best guy in IT that also he's a problem solver that can help us to fix that? So it really burned out of the field and not from the academic, because of the nature of technology, which is evolving fast. Everybody wants to finish their development time. Everybody needs to set up this network. So this is how it really developed. So I think that currently, if I'm looking the difference between Israel and Brazil, it's about the standardization. And many times I see, hey, and you see it a lot, right, in LinkedIn, I have this certification, I have this certification, and they're so proud of this specific certification, but it's not about the certification. It's about, do you know what to do? Do you have the skills? Can you practically do that? It's not about the theory. It's not about passing the test. And many times when we also hire, we address that.
Excellent. That's a great segue to my next question, which is, when you are hiring, what are the most important characteristics that you're looking for in candidates?
Yeah. So I can look at it on both sides of a specific person. So it depends also to which position am I hiring, for a junior level or for a senior level. If it's for a senior level, we're going to be tough. We're going to be tough. Why? Because our clients are tough. Because they ask for the highest standards. When we approach a project or a tender or a specific line, they have very high demands. And essentially, they are entrusting us with the most critical of assets. And you have to take great care of that, because if you do something wrong, it can greatly affect the business that we spoke about earlier. And if I'm looking at, so it's going to be really looking at your experience. You cannot be a professional in one day. You will need to have several years of experience and dealing in depth into a specific topic. I'm looking for that in-depth topic. You need to be an expert in something, not just expert of everything, of none, as they say. And if I'm looking at the junior position, so it's important to me when I'm speaking to or interviewing someone like that, that he has a good grasp or understanding of the process of things and not just of knowing of things. So he knows that this process of IT or technology is that A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, leads to E, and he understands the entire process and how it is interconnected and what will happen if you move one piece. So this is one aspect of the junior. And the second aspect for me, and I think this is in general maybe for employees, is the loyalty to the company, to remain and working and doing that work for minimum of 2 to 3 years, because it will take time until myself as an employer will be able to have these fruits from this junior, meaning that I will be able to send him to meaningful projects or tasks or functions, because in the first 6 months or 7 months, or he will still rely on my seniors.
Great. I'm going to take advantage because we have you've done a great job being very objective in the responses, which is great. I have a question about how companies assess or should assess which risks they should try to combat or handle in-house with their full-time team, and in which cases should they seek to outsource, specialized knowledge. How do you advise companies on that?
So first, you need to know yourself. You need to know who are your team members. You need to understand the level of skills, and you need to understand the breadth and weight of the tasks that are in front of you. So many times, even large organizations, for example, we work with some of the largest banks in the world, and they have huge teams. They still take outsourced companies to do specific functions for them, because they prioritize. They say, okay, this is critical functions. I'm going to do that in-house, but I still have many tasks, so I'm going to do it from the outsourced company. Now, it is hard to maintain internally inside an organization a really diversified set of skills. So I would need to understand about cloud and networking and secure coding. And so I need to understand what are my strengths. And so, for example, if I don't have a deep knowledge in cloud, I will use external knowledge from external experts or consultants to complement that. And I will need to strategize the next 1, 2, 3 years and to understand, am I going to build the internal capacity of my organization to address that task? Or is it critical system that sits in the cloud that I have to maintain this knowledge to be inside the organization for many years and not just let that knowledge go out the window with the turnover of employees? So it is really tailored to specific organization, and it requires a discussion per organization, its needs, its internal people, and it's part of actually some of the risk assessments that we do. So part of it is gathering information via interviews.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Amir. I've got a million more questions that I could ask, but more interesting, as I said, is going to be in the second part of the event, in the roundtable, where we take questions from the audience. So please continue to send in your questions. Thank you, and we'll be back with you shortly. Agora vamos trocar para português.
And now we switch back into Portuguese. It is a great pleasure to welcome Lilian Rosenbach. She is a relentless learner. She's an unstoppable student. She is responsible for the Brazil-based research team at SciSource. She is, again, responsible for the research team here, for content production, training, instructor team management, student engagement. She has a number of responsibilities there. She plays a number of roles. Lilian has expertise in ethical hacking, secure code review, malware analysis, guideline development. She has over 10 years of experience in this industry, and moreover, she is simultaneously doing 2 programs at Uninter in physics and also in cybersecurity and defense. It is a great pleasure to have Lilian here. So just like I did with Amir, I'm going to start with a question. Lilian, what are the main attributes and competencies that differentiate excellent professionals from mediocre ones in cybersecurity? Well, that is a question that's been troubling the market for quite some time. In my opinion, it's that eagerness to learn. What differentiates a good professional from a mediocre professional is that the mediocre professional will learn how to use a tool, and that's it. It will just, if a button changes, he won't be able to do his job anymore. However, an excellent professional has this eagerness to learn. He will understand how the tool works and what's behind the stage, how it works, how it was built, how it was designed, the initial objective, the process, the technologies that are involved. So yes, basically it's this willingness to learn, this desire to never stop learning. Great, great. Now piggybacking on what you just said, how do you define that? Because this industry is very dynamic. So how do you determine what to learn? And then once you determine what has to be learned, what is your learning process like? Once you define the new areas you want to learn, what is your learning process? Well, it really depends on your objective. If your objective is joining the market as a junior professional, learn the basics, network, operating systems, good foundation, script language. You don't have to start with programming language. Just keep it simple in the beginning. Just keep. Now, if you're already in this industry and you want to specialize, if you want to acquire deeper knowledge or expertise in some area, then my recommendation is look at what's not likely to disappear. Some areas will disappear. We know that in technology, many technologies are short-lived. They start, they gain status, and then they disappear, they vanish. So be careful about that. And well, see what type of topic makes your heart beat faster, what you would really be passionate about. For example, I come from a programming background. I love programming. I love coding. I love that, really. I'm passionate about that. If I start to specialize in networks and infrastructure, well, I can do it. I can manage. But if I really want to learn more, if I really want to go deeper in networks, for example, that will bore me and I'll stop. So you have to choose what makes your heart beat faster, really, what you like to do. And then look at the market trends, what's likely to grow, what's likely to stop growing. And again, I always recommend that you start with free sources because you never really know whether you're going to pursue that or not. So you can start with free content and then look for a more technical specialization course. It doesn't have to be academic or under a university. If it is, good, but you can start with malware analysis, SciSource, and I strongly recommend SciSource because I've never seen anything even similar to SciSource, and I've done courses in Brazil and abroad, and I'm not saying it just because my boss is here. I firmly believe in it, so much so that I started there as a student. So I'm not licking anyone's boots, but you can talk to experienced people, talk to senior professionals, talk to people. Perfect, awesome. Before we go to the next question, since you talked about your boss, for the audience, I think there's a very interesting dynamic here because Lilian is helping set up the company's operations in Brazil, and Amir is the founder of the company. So the dynamic between them is great, and it's very interesting to see their perspectives from different roles, from different geographies. So guys, please keep that in mind when you ask your questions to our speakers, because we have 2 points of view, 2 sides of the equation in the same company here. It's very special, so please take advantage of that. Lilian, next question for you. Please tell us a bit about your continuing learning journey. Tell us about your ups and downs, the turning points, the most important decisions you made in your learning process. Well, first, I had just been hired as a developer in another company, and I asked them to go to the cybersecurity area. I just put on a pretty face and asked them. I came to my boss and said, come on, I know you have a cybersecurity team and I want to work there. That's what I like to do. I love hacking things. I want to be there. I want to hack things with them. So that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It took them forever to say okay for me. They left me waiting. They kept me hanging for 7 months, but eventually I went to the cyber area of that company. So that was a great decision that took me some courage. Now, in terms of technical knowledge and expertise, the most important thing was when I decided to enroll at SciSource as a student back in 2020. That was also a turning point for me. And I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, that that decision completely changed my career path. Ever since then, everything changed. The third relevant moment was when I took on the task of developing the application security team in a financial market company here in Brazil. Actually, they even participated in a talking business here. Their CISO participated, their CSO, Andre Vidal, participated here in a talking business. So there I could help the team design the policies and even make internal sales because, getting people's buy-in is complicated. When you go to another department and you start giving them recommendations and opinions, it's terrible. It's even harder than selling a product to an external customer. Getting internal buy-in, internal supporters is very difficult, but I learned a lot. I would say these are the three landmarks of my career. Great. So we can have an audit here of this question. Now, how did you get a job in a multinational company in Brazil? What were the steps? How did you get a job at a multinational company in Brazil? What were the steps, conversations, emails, meetings, and projects that resulted in you being hired by SciSource and Amir? Well, SciSource was not my first multinational company. The first company I worked for was also a multinational company. First, I only sent them my resume and I went through the regular application process. There were no indications, no recommendations. But that was for the first job in a multinational company. With SciSource, it was a little different. I started as a student in 2020 and I started to annoy the hell out of them. I asked them so many questions. I was a nightmare. I had a number of questions, or they blocked my account because I was doing things too fast. So they thought I was doing something wrong. So I drove them crazy, and I drove them so crazy that they invited me to be a monitor. After some time, they promoted me to instructor. And then earlier this year, a colleague of mine who was responsible for Brazil back then, as far as I know, Amir can correct me if I'm wrong, but this colleague of mine came to me and said, "Hey, are you interested in working for abroad?" And I said, "Is this an invitation?" And he said, "Well, I can try to pull some strings. I can see if it can happen." And then I had a number of interviews, many interviews with Shai, our CTO. I also had interviews with our global research leader, Shahaf, and a practical test, really. And that was it. Awesome. I just had to be shameless, I just had to be brave and shameless. Yeah. Amir said that before, right? You said you never stop, right? You have to go beyond, right? You have to learn more. You have to have this eagerness to learn. And you sound very confident, and that's extremely important. Good. And how important was the English language in your professional evolution? What's the importance of English in each stage of your professional evolution? Well, ever since the beginning of my career, I worked with customers from abroad. In my first job, I dealt with British school and British society, so I've always used English at work. English has always been fundamental, both in practice, in my everyday work, and also in theoretical terms, to learn to read technical materials, to read, to learn, because there is a shortage of this type of material in Portuguese. We're trying to do something about it at SciSource, but still the gap of knowledge between Portuguese and English is stunning. So both to learn and in my everyday work, English was key. Perfect. Last question before we open for questions and questions for you. Can you give me an example of a mistake or of a behavior error you have had or seen? A behavior error, and how could you or that person have prevented that error or minimized the impact of that error? Well, there's a story I have to tell. It is critical and it completely matches what Amir said about maturity. So I was working for another company. It was an European multinational company, not a Brazilian company, and I started there as an intern. And since my second week there, every week I would tell the project manager that the code was full of security breaches, and it was just a matter of time until someone hacked into it, until those mistakes, those errors were explored. But I was an intern, so they said, okay, let her talk. No one really believed me, and I didn't have the power to push it. I should have formalized it. I should have written more formal emails. I wanted to, but for some reason I didn't. I should have, but I didn't. Eventually, after 2 years of warnings, when I left the development team, one of the projects was attacked, a ransomware attack, and they had to call me again, and it was a mess. Trust me, it was a mess. And then because I was already based in another area, I was working with another client actually, and then they called me to work in the RTO because I was actually the only person who knew how that server worked. So they should have heard me the first time. And that fits with the errors that Amir mentioned before, everything that Amir tries to prevent, this loss of knowledge with people turnover, right? That's a concern. And their neglect. They were, the only word I can think of is neglect, really, negligence. And the lack of a backup, because they didn't even have backup of that. So, well, the list goes on. To minimize this type of error, to minimize the impact of this type of error, backup would have been amazing. A backup in their cloud service would have worked miracles. And again, a standard security policy that was very flawed. We could access the server from anywhere. There was no VPN, no firewall. It was really bad. And then, of course, after this happened, they implemented some measures. I helped them develop the policies, design the policies, implement them. But yes, I think that was the biggest error I've seen in terms of ransomware. It was by far the largest. And now let's go to the questions from our audience. Italo is asking the following. I have a question. If we have the network of information is completely coded, why is it so hard to keep cybersecurity, to maintain cybersecurity? So Lillian, you can start. Why is it so hard to do it? Well, first, coding does not mean encryption. Coding is encoding. It's easy to undo coding base 6.4, which is one of the coding that we use the most. With a single command, you can undo it. It's not encryption. Much communication online is encrypted, but this is usually only for the traffic. You can still hack into the system and extract data from the system. You can inject malicious codes, malware, and in cases of ransomware, you're not even that interested in obtaining the data. You just need to make the data inaccessible. You just have to block access to the data. So that's one of the reasons.
I'm going to give the next question to Amir because I think that you addressed that nicely, and let's keep going. So Aline Garbulho asked us the following question. When it comes to cybersecurity today, should it be connected to the strategic management area within organizations to help protect from attacks? So where should it report into, and would reporting into strategic management help?
You are on mute.
Sarah was on mute. So there was a huge shift on this approach, and we saw many incidents that was not reported properly in huge companies, and that resulted in firing key stakeholders inside the organization, talking about really senior management. And there is this trend that is called now shift left. So shift left, you need to move the decision making from the beginning. And that goes everywhere. Of course, it begins from the management. And today, for example, also in CySource, so we strongly advocate for having, for the management, first of all, some educational program. So first of all, they will have the lingo, the way to communicate about this terminology, about these topics. And when they are able to communicate it with the technical team, they can make better decisions. But it doesn't stop there. There is also a shift left trend even in developing products. So we're talking about product managers that by design think about what is the cybersecurity strategy for this product when I'm developing it, and not just think about it afterwards when I already have the code. All right, I have something ready, now let's secure that. So that's a huge impact of our organization. And if you're taking the right decisions, and you are, at least if you don't have the ability to nominate a person to be a CISO because there isn't enough capacity, at least to nominate the functions to the IT team, that they are aware that they should update or create hardening or to create a specific practice about it.
Excelente. Muito obrigado. Agora eu vou fazer uma pergunta.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And now I'll try to combine two persons' questions into one, from Felipe Silva and Ana Paula Campos. Both are basically asking the same thing. They're asking us about the beginning of your work in cybersecurity. What does it take? Do you need any prior knowledge in programming? And what is the expected education? What is the education that is most required or that's most indicated to join this industry?
Se inscreve lá, assina lá. Perdão pela brincadeira, mas eu vou pedir para o Amir complementar depois.
Says Academy, subscribe to it. But again, and CySource, no, but really, you need some prior knowledge in computing, in IT. You don't need that prior knowledge in programming. It's optional. It's a plus, it's a bonus, but it's optional. As far as I'm concerned, you need to understand how systems work. You need to understand how the internet works, how data communication works, and that's a starting point, right? Once you are very clear about that, you can study Python to start, or Linux, Python. That's a good start, and then you can choose the area you want, defense or offense, and we have specific careers for both sectors. Actually, if you're curious, you can go to our website. There's a track you can follow. There's a list of recommended courses in order.
Perfect. I don't know, Amir, if you want to complement that, or I can go on to the next question. Either is fine.
So just to say that the question of the learning path is an interesting topic worldwide. So I have discussions from time to time with the NIST. So the NIST framework is that unit inside the NIST American framework that is discussing what are the steps to become a specific professionals. So this is still being receiving the shape of how it should be. But I think that what Lilian said here is the good start for that. So really that Linux, that Python, and then going to how everything is interconnected. And really, it is about replicating existing techniques again and again, because it repeats itself in some way. Beyond that, it's becoming a researcher, because then you explore the unknown.
Great. I'm going to continue then. So Emerson Novellini asks, what's the greatest challenge in cybersecurity? Is it the anonymity of the enemy, the speed of technological change? What are the biggest challenges?
So I'll talk about the threat and then the challenge. So the biggest threat that at least I identify today is the ransomware. Ransomware, the encryption, and many companies that are being affected with that. And part of the reason that it is such a huge threat is that because today, the way that ransomware is being handed out or delivered, it is even by organized crime that today is not working in the physical world, is working in the digital world. So you can find sellers and shops that are just selling ransomware, and you just buy them and you use them. So I think the challenge is to really, of course, to create prevention for that. And it's not an easy task. And we are working on doing that. And there is huge task force that is UN and Interpol, and there are websites about that. But it is also about really investigating and letting the law enforcement authorities to investigate this organized crime groups and units and sellers and shops to cut that process of selling this ransomware as a service to other third parties that are using that.
Perfeito. Agora eu vou juntar duas perguntas e vocês dois podem responder.
Now I'm going to combine two questions, and you can ask them as you see fit. You can answer one or the other. The first is from Larissa Andrade. She asked it in English, but she says, in your opinion, what language should we learn first to work in cybersecurity? And Sergio Tahashi says, are there options related to AI? Can AI help us with cybersecurity, or is that a risk?
Lillian, you're up first.
Sobre linguagem de programação, eu sempre...
About programming language, well, first you have to differentiate script language and programming language, because you need to know that BEST is a script language. Linux, usually Unix. But for programming specifically, I'd say Python, because Python is very easy to prototype things, to test things. So Python is very helpful. I would go with Python. For AI and cybersecurity, yes, there's a lot being developed, a lot being discussed. I'm not really in the know. Maybe Amir knows more than I do in this area, but yes, Amir, over to you.
Sure. So I think that AI, one of the best applications today for AI, to my opinion, is to have that as your virtual assistants to referring to cyber challenges that you are facing as an organization. Because this specific AI, whether it would be this chat or that chat, can reference many items. So you can quickly receive the assistance and approaches on how to approach to solve a specific cybersecurity challenge within your organization. But there is a risk in that, because the challenge today with AI is the validation of the output that you are receiving. So there are companies, and we also have such research studies that are combining the chat, but with validation, because you need to validate the answer that you're receiving. So if you're getting advice from an AI on how to secure your application or how to secure your network, so it's a good usage for that, because it's kind of a co-pilot for you, but you really need to validate that. So I think as we go ahead to the future, we'll have more validation. I think companies such as ourselves, when we see ourselves as a cybersecurity company within the AI domain, we see ourselves as validators of the input that can rapidly come from these AI applications.
Great. So next question is from Carol Diaz. In English, there's a strong push to go to cybersecurity right now instead of other areas. Do you believe that in the future this area will be oversaturated, or that in the long term it will be a huge, part of the job market and continue to have the level of opportunity that we're seeing now?
Yeah, so I love this question. I want to say two things about it. One, will there ever be a time that there will be no more crime? So that's, since ever there are criminals and there are law enforcers or protectors, and this is the game within the cybersecurity. We are developing technology and we need to protect that because there are bad actors that are trying to exploit that for numerous reasons, for financial reasons, for other reasons. So I think there will always be a major role for cybersecurity, and will continuously grow as we continuously grow in using technology. And the second part to this question, my answer to this question would be, we are becoming more and more of a global village, meaning that the professional in Brazil can cater and work with counterparts globally. So the amount of demand is growing everywhere. So this is part of the reasons that we also approach Brazil, because we wanted to be a player in the transformation of the workforce, of the local workforce, because we believe in the workforce of Brazil and the power of Brazil workforce to create a job and to create value to the region itself and to the surrounding of this region.
Excelente. Então, a Ana Salles coloca o seguinte.
Salles is asking the following. Is there any agency in Brazil or any organization validating cybersecurity professionals? I'm not talking about education and certifications. I'm talking about any regional trade association or government body. No, there's no such thing for no technology career here, really. Not for developers, not for cybersecurity people. There's no such thing, no validation organization. And largely, this is due to the fact that our community as a whole decided that this would not be a good idea. Now, Leonardo is asking about frameworks. Frameworks as Dimitri. Do they help prevent security problems? Dimitri. They help detect problems early. They help with the early detection, but I don't think they help prevent or detect. But they help detect early, not prevent maybe. Amir, what do you think?
So for the meter and attack, I think this framework, one of the importance of that is that it creates an interface. It creates an interface between the professional and tools and decision-making. Because if everybody speaks in a different language about the importance of specific attack or specific activity, then it's hard to take good decisions. The meter attack framework is used by many technological solutions. And by using that there, you can better understand what is that you are seeing now, that is happening within your network. And when you're working with other teams or you're comparing your work to other teams, you can better define that. And I think that is the importance of the framework, that we can work together, collaborators, and understand the meaning of things that we are working with.
Great. So we have a question from Edilson. And it's, I'll put two questions together now. So Edilson is asking whether cybersecurity should be within IT, or if it should be an independent, separate of the general IT. And Rafaela asks what the primary types of cybersecurity threats are to individuals and to companies right now. And it might be interesting for you to address how has that changed? What are the changing types of threats over time that you're seeing?
Sure. So for the first part of this question, we believe that, when you approach reality of organizations, ideally everybody has an IT team and they have a cyber team, but that's not reality. The reality is that there is a great variety, and many times there will be an IT team, not always the cybersecurity team or the awareness for that. So I think that the foremost thing is that we need the understanding that everybody needs to take a role in cybersecurity. They need to add to the role description. So if you're an IT professional, you need to equip yourself with several skills. If you're a developer, you need to equip yourself with several skills, even the QA. Now, ideally, yes, you will have a cybersecurity team, but that's more and more prevalent in financial sector, like banking. So they will have their SOC team typically, or if you have many applications or developers, then you will have maybe some testers inside. So that's ideally. So I would prefer the approach that you will need to work on the skills of specific key people. And that brings me also to what is important within cyber organization in threats. So I would say towards cyber hygiene, that's basics that every organization needs to have. So cyber hygiene would be were the systems like the Windows, I don't know, whatever you have, 10 were updated to the latest update by Microsoft for security. So that's basics. You need to do that. Or was the SMB closed? So those are basic things that you need to do first. And I think that like 70 to 80% of incidents can be prevented if you have good cyber hygiene within your organization. And of course, also speaking about basic awareness of employees, I witnessed an organization that lost $1.2 million because that a hacker sat inside this organization network. He understood the correspondence that is going between the CFO to suppliers, and he actually, in the right time that he needed to transfer a payment, told him, okay, I changed my bank account, now please transfer that to that. So a good level of awareness might have helped with this situation, and might in $1.2 million goes a long way. So those are cyber hygiene. Those are two keywords that I would suggest them to do first.
Great. So this next question,
Eu
go ahead.
posso só complementar um pouco.
Yes, but can I build on what he said? In addition to what Amir said, let me just share another example with you. I think it's relevant for our viewers. And be careful. I have seen administrative access to the entire network, to the entire domain of a bank, because they had left the credentials in the Git, in the source code repository. So it was available for anyone online. And it's incredible. So cyber hygiene is fundamental. This digital hygiene applies not only to common employees, even IT people, developers, they need good, serious training on cyber hygiene. Okay, excellent. Now we have another question. Another question popped up here, and it is about testing. How you go about that, and how do you assess the capabilities of applicants, of candidates to a job in your company? How do you evaluate potential employees? You talked about the importance of knowing how to do things, not only a bunch of certificates. Oh, I have this certificate, that certificate. Of course, certificates help. Like you can say, okay, this guy could be a good candidate. But the question is, how do you evaluate and how do you test the skills and the capabilities of applicants or candidates to a position there?
Can I go?
Both of you. So you go first, Lillian, and then.
Okay. The tasks that I administered were, we sent, for example, if it was for malware analysis, we send a sample, something that we know the indicator, send a... Perdão, tá falando em inglês. Eu tô...
Sorry, I was speaking English. I'm going crazy with this bilingual thing. Back to Portuguese. If it's for malware analysis, we'll send them a sample. We know the commitment indicators there, and we ask the candidate to send us a report back. For pen tests, since I was already at the company, they just invited me to participate in a pen test, a pain test that the team was running, and I worked together with the Israeli team. So for pain tests and more junior or full positions, Amir can tell us more.
So it is about the practical testing. So we will hand over labs in various level of difficulties depending on your seniority, and we will take a look at how you write the report about the details. It is critical for us. There is a big difference between doing a write-up and doing a security report. A security report is being submitted to executives and technical teams inside the organization, and they take actions coming from that. Then these actions can be in the worth of hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, and it can change the internal structure of IT team and stuff. So we take a good look at the details, and we understand that if this person paid attention to the details and he cared about it, then he will care also in all the other projects that will hand over to him.
Great. So I'm going to take one last audience question, and then I will turn to each of you because we want to be cognizant of your time. And I know that it's almost 2:30 in the morning for Amir. So thank you again for sticking with us. The question from the participant who's listening in is from Mides, and it's basically asking, is it a good strategy to have professionals come in from areas outside of cybersecurity who have, that think and use computational thinking, and to have them move into cybersecurity, or to, bring in AI to help? So I think it's about the transition into cybersecurity from other areas. If you could speak briefly about that. And then right after that, I'd love each of you just to give a last, piece of advice, recognizing that we've been talking about cybersecurity, but primarily, how do you skill up? How do you progress? How do you learn and move forward? So if you could have a last bit of advice on that more broadly, that would also be great. So maybe we could start with Lilian, and then give the last word to Amir.
Certo, sobre profissionais de outras.
So about professionals from other areas coming to cybersecurity. I started as a programmer myself. I was a programmer for 10 years before I started working in cyber. So it's valid. I think it's a good idea, but that's my personal opinion. And I don't trust anyone who starts directly in cybersecurity, right? I am suspicious of that, especially for more sensitive positions. I tend to prefer people who have some experience with networks or infrastructure development, something like that. I particularly like that. My piece of advice would be that eagerness to learn, be thirsty for knowledge, and choose what makes your heart beat faster. I know it sounds techy and cheesy and cliche, but it's important. Make sure you choose something that you love.
Okay, so I will complement that. So for the first part, I can say that I have witnessed many people that completed the full transformation in profession. From, for example, one person that worked in Jules and learned from scratch everything. It took him more than a year. But he was able to approach that first junior position. I witnessed a train driver that does that. So I'm saying that everything is possible for these people, and they can create this transition if they do all the hard work that is needed, and they do it in the right way, and they have a lot of practical experience doing that to achieve that first junior position. And I think that is a life-changing career for them. And the second tip that I would say, to my opinion, for success is community. Community is key. One of the uniqueness of CySource in achieving such a thriving community of hundreds of professionals that we were able to introduce to the market is the community. People that is working together, consulting together. We have dedicated chat applications that we created for that, to create knowledge tribes, so they can ask each other questions and learn from each other. We have a saying in Hebrew, "En sakin mitchadedet ela beyerech reuta." This means that a knife is only sharpened if you brace it against the other one. So that goes also for learning.
Excellent. Well, let me just conclude by saying thank you so much to both of you. Muito obrigado aos dois. Tem sido prazer trabalhar.
Thank you guys very much. Learning from you is always a pleasure. Lilian is an amazing professional, an amazing student. Amir, congratulations on the hire. And I would like to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. It's invaluable. To the participants, to our viewers, thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions, and stay tuned for our next event. Thank you all very much. Have all a good one. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Muito obrigado.
See ya.
Thank you.